Welcome to Words with Wings. I'm Alex Spencer. Today on the podcast, my conversation with Jamie McLeod-Skinner, candidate for the United States House of Representatives from Oregon's District 2. A moment of inspiration, and I'll be stepping on my soapbox. Today I'm going to begin with a list. January 1, 2018, Huntsville, Alabama. 1 dead, 3 injured. January 4, 2018, Brinkley, Arkansas. 1 dead, 3 injured. January 5, 2018, Hattiesburg, Mississippi. 0 dead, 6 injured. January 7, 2018, Plantation, Florida. 0 dead, 4 injured. January 7, 2018, Union Springs, Alabama. 1 dead, 5 injured. January 11, 2018, St. Robert, Missouri. 2 dead, 2 injured. January 12, 2018, Nashville, Tennessee. 3 dead, 2 injured. January 14, 2018, Madison, Alabama. 0 dead, 4 injured. January 14, 2018, Utah, Alabama. 1 dead, 4 injured. January 15, 2018, Alucha, Florida. 0 dead, 5 injured. January 16, 2018, York, South Carolina. 1 dead, 4 injured. January 17, 2018, Washington, D.C. 1 dead, 3 injured. January 21, 2018, Chicago, Illinois. 0 dead, 4 injured. January 21, 2018, Orlando, Florida. 0 dead, 4 injured. January 23, 2018, Benton, Kentucky. 2 dead, 14 injured. January 23, 2018, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. 0 dead, 4 injured. January 25, 2018, Washington, D.C. 0 dead, 4 injured. January 27, 2018, Bowling Green, Kentucky. 0 dead, 4 injured. Los Angeles, California. January 27, 2018, 0 dead, 5 injured. January 28, 2018, Indianapolis, Indiana. 2 dead, 3 injured. January 28, 2018, Reading, Pennsylvania. 4 dead, 0 injured. January 28, 2018, Melcroft, Pennsylvania. 5 dead, 0 injured. January 31, 2018, St. Louis, Missouri. 0 dead, 4 injured. February 3, 2018, Cleveland, Ohio. 1 dead, 5 injured. February 5, 2018, Colorado Springs, Colorado. 2 dead, 4 injured. February 7, 2018, Lake Worth, Florida. 3 dead, 3 injured. February 10, 2018, Paintsville, Kentucky. 5 dead, 0 injured. February 11, 2018, Detroit, Michigan. 4 dead, 3 injured. February 13, 2018, New Orleans, Louisiana. 2 dead, 3 injured. February 14, 2018, Pompano Beach, Florida. 17 dead, 15 injured. And another list. Total number of incidents involving guns, 6,613. Number of deaths, 1,834. Number of injuries, 3,161. Number of children age 0 to 11 killed or injured, 69. Number of teens age 12 to 17 killed or injured, 347. Mass shootings, 30. Officer-involved incident, officer shot or killed, 39. Officer-involved incident, subject, suspect, shot or killed, 294. Home invasion, 267. Defensive use, 183. Unintentional shooting, 215. Gun violence and crime incidences are collected, validated from 2,500 sources daily. Incidents and their source data are found at the gunviolencearchive.org website. By the way, that list 2018, the past 45 days of our lives in America, the land of the free. How many more need to die before our antiquated and unrealistic gun laws are commandeered by thoughtful leaders? The shooter in yesterday's massacre at a high school in South Florida purchased an AR-15. He is 19 years old and cannot rent a car. I'm going to give that a moment. He is 19 years old, cannot rent a car, and was able to walk into a store in the light of day and purchase an AR-15. And yes, mental health issues need to be addressed. And yes, anyone who has lost their mother last fall is depressed. And we need to treat mental health as any other healthcare issue. And on top of that, can we please make it at least a little more difficult to purchase a gun? Any gun. The ridiculous taunt, "Guns don't kill people, people kill people," rings in my ears like some mindless chant at a high school football game. The truth is that people with guns kill people. And if this kid did not have that gun, 16 kids would not be dead. 3 kids would not be fighting for their lives right now in a hospital, and a beloved coach would be there Friday night. This kid had this gun and what he himself calls an arsenal. And he, like many before him, used it to kill. Any kid who has lost his parents would be depressed. In America, he could go out and buy an AR-15 and use it to kill people, which was the gun's intended use. It was created as a human killing machine. And yesterday, this gun, one gun, with one 19-year-old boy at the trigger, killed 16 other kids and the football coach. When will it be enough? I'm going to ask that you do some homework on this. I'm going to ask that you go to your representative's website and find out if they have an A rating from the NRA. And if they do, fire them. The A rating means a support of gun laws or a lack of gun legislation that made it possible for these kids to be murdered yesterday, and for the massacre to happen in Las Vegas, and for the massacre to happen in Sandy Hook. Once you know the NRA rating of your member of Congress, of your senator, and you find they have an A rating, fire them. Fire that member of Congress. Fire that senator. Midterm elections are coming up, and it is time we use an election as a referendum on gun control. Here, Oregon's District 2 Representative Walden has an A rating from the NRA. It is time for he and his fellow anti-gun legislation cohorts to step down and allow people who care about this issue to step up and vote for common sense gun reform. It is time for this madness to end. Today on the podcast, I feature an interview with candidate for the United States House of Representatives from District OR2, my district here in Oregon, Jamie McLeod-Skinner. I have asked her for a statement on gun violence in America. She says, quote, "There have been 8 school shootings already in 2018. 1 is too many. If Congress won't address gun violence, they must clear the way for states to act. Protecting our kids is a nonpartisan issue." That, the statement from Jamie McLeod-Skinner. And now my conversation with Jamie McLeod-Skinner, candidate for the United States House of Representatives from Oregon's District 2. Jamie has a track record for standing up, speaking out, and working as a dedicated public servant who is open, kind, and unafraid to confront the issues head-on. I am pleased to present to you my conversation with Jamie McLeod-Skinner. It is wonderful to have you with me, Jamie. Hi.
Hi. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to chat with you about this race.
Well, I am lucky enough to know a lot about you and about how you came to be and how you came to run this race. I wonder if you could expand upon that for our listeners.
Sure. My background, I finished high school in Southern Oregon here in our district. My mom is a teacher who's now retired, but she taught in Southern and Central Oregon. My sister's raising her family in the Bend area, and my wife's family's been ranching in Eastern Oregon for over 100 years. So I'm very connected to and rooted in what makes us Oregonians. And one of the things that I've been focused on in the 7 months that I've been traveling throughout our district and talking to folks across the political spectrum is really to bring the focus back to Oregon values and the fact that across the board, we're committed to caring for our families and caring for our communities. As a focus on bringing folks together and bringing forward ideas, because it's not just about replacing Walden, it's really about bringing better representation to our district. And I find when I'm talking to folks, and just yesterday was one example in a conversation, people are feeling really concerned and afraid by what they're seeing going on in Washington, also by the lack of representation we have and the lack of leadership we have in our current representative. But there's a lot of fear across lines. We have, of course, a very large district, and I've met folks in Eastern Oregon who are nervous about folks in Southern Oregon or in Bend, and I've met folks in Bend and Southern Oregon, especially in the Ashland area, who have a fear of folks in Eastern Oregon.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, part of what I'm trying to do is just hold up a mirror to folks and have people see just what are the remarkable people across our district, and to really get people focused on what we have in common, what unites us, and our common goals and visions. Because, as I've said many times, the thing that unites us all, and the thing I found in common throughout our district, is that people care first about their families and second about their communities. And those are priorities that people are passionate about, regardless of party affiliation, regardless of some of the things that the silos we typically put ourselves in, or the pigeonholes we typically put ourselves in. So I'm trying to get people to really focus on those commonalities that we have and the common vision for the future in terms of providing healthcare. I mean, that's a common desire across the board. In fighting the opioid crisis, that's something that's common across the board and something that really touches us all, either directly or indirectly. And so really trying to move us beyond the us and them rhetoric to really focus on us and how we can work together for a better communities, a better district. And, that then becomes part of the language and the focus I want to bring to Washington to get us back on track with figuring out how we work together, have discussions about, because we have some fair differences around policy issues, but get that to be the discussion again instead of the divisiveness that we're seeing.
You have so much strength in your background as far as work with water rights and water reclamation and all of these things that are so important, especially right here in Klamath Falls. Can you kind of give me your take on the KBRA?
Sure. My professional background is in engineering, in regional planning, and then also in water law. And I clerked for the judge who is presiding over the Klamath Basin adjudication, which is different from the KBRA. That was the agreement. I've worked in Klamath Falls and on water issues specifically a good part of my life. On the KBRA, I think that was, as folks in Klamath well know, it was the resolution, the agreement to move the community beyond the conflict over water. It was cobbled together after almost 10 years of really hard work by folks throughout the community who represented very different interests, but were really committed to developing a solution for their region. And I have such great respect and appreciation for that effort. Where it fell short, unfortunately, was the lack of leadership from our current representative. The KBRA needed to go through and get support from Congress, and our current representative did not support the Klamath Basin Restoration Agreement. And so, unfortunately, it put the community back at square one. My philosophy on natural resource management and these types of agreements is really to respect local wisdom, to provide the resources necessary so folks on the ground can achieve a big picture vision goal and work together to accomplish that. And then once a community has come up with that kind of solution, to support it and respect the the insights and the wisdom of folks who are living with the issue and are challenged by the issue on a day-to-day basis.
You are so knowledgeable in all of this. It's like you have this complete education that so many people just don't have. I was able to listen to one of your opponents last night, and you are the only one of his opponents that he mentioned by name twice. That tells me, Jamie, that you're the one to beat. How does it feel? I mean, here you are. This is going to be a tough race, no matter how you look at it. And you have this field of, we have 7 candidates now, right?
7, there may be 8, because there's also a gentleman who has filed, but I've not seen him show up. So final filing is in March, so we may have more or less by that date. But yeah, we've got, you need to count it on 2 hands, essentially, is the number of folks we've got in the Democratic primary.
That's a lot. Showing up and listening to everything all of you guys have to say is so important.
And just to expand upon the point you mentioned, on the campaign trail, we've been having several candidate forums, and we recently had candidate forums in Ashland and Medford, so traditionally more liberal and a traditionally more conservative town. And both forums had between 200 and 300 people who attended. They did a straw poll after each of those forums of the 6 candidates who were speaking. And in both straw polls, over 50% of the folks who participated ranked me as the top candidate.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and the number 2 person who was ranked second as the number 1 candidate was in the teens.
Wow.
And so it was, it was a pretty sharp contrast. To your point, it's very well taken that elections have consequences, and we're seeing that right now in Washington, D.C., as we're seeing a promotion of divisiveness, we're seeing repealing and cutting back of our access to health care, we're seeing this regressive tax bill that recently was passed that provides long-term double-digit tax breaks to corporations and wealthy folks, and provides a short-term single-digit tax break to the rest of us, to regular folks. And then after a couple years, our taxes increase and so go up to single, then double digits. So within 10 years for the average family, like say someone's making, family's making $30,000 a year, within 10 years, we'll be paying at 27% above last year's tax rates. And in addition to this, seeing a 1.5 trillion, that's trillion with a T, increase in our deficit based on this tax cut. Congress just yesterday or the Senate came up with an initial agreement on a new spending bill, which is going to shoot up our deficit even more. So the tax bill that Congress recently passed was essentially like a really bad payday loan, where we get some resources initially, it's true, but we end up paying off multiple times over. And this is the legacy that we're passing on to our kids, in addition to things like climate change. So these are issues that we really have to take seriously and tackle. And again, elections have consequences. This is what we're facing. So folks who are concerned about the direction we're heading really do need to step up and get involved, register and vote. The point you made, which is an important one, is to vote in the primary. In Oregon, we have closed primaries, which means you have to be a Democrat to vote in the Democratic primary, and et cetera with other parties as well. So if folks want to vote in the Democratic primary, they'll need to register. And you know what? If you're an independent, you can register to vote as a Democrat for the primary and then switch your registration back to independent for the general. You're absolutely allowed to do that. Just keep an eye on the deadline for doing that. You need to be registered for the party you want to vote for in the primary. In many ways, it's exciting that we've got so many people who are so passionate about replacing Walden. That's true of the candidates. That's also true of people throughout our district who want to see a change. And in the past 7 months, when I've traveled throughout the 20 counties of our district, I've heard folks across the political spectrum, Democrats, independents, Republicans, and folks with other party affiliations, all speak about their frustration with our current representative and how they want to see change. So that's why I've stepped up to run. What distinguishes me in the primary is the fact that I'm the only candidate with elected office experience. I've served on a city council or a city of 120,000 for 8 years. And that means I also ran and won 2 elections. And being able to run and win an election is critically important to challenge Greg Walden for the congressional seat in the general. So that's some of the background I bring. The other thing is just the work I've done, the background and work I've done throughout our 20-county district. Our district is the size of the state of Missouri. It's huge. And so it's really, it's critical to show up, to listen, and to chat with folks face to face and hear their concerns, hear their hopes and dreams, and really be able to embody that and turn that into policy. And also the fact I've worked in the district, I'm one of the few candidates who've actually worked in our district and also have family ties across our district from southern, central, and eastern Oregon.
You know, you touched on taxes earlier, and I know that you have some great ideas for a tax plan as far as the farmers are concerned. Would you like to elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. And I think one of the things that's really important for Democrats to do is show up, listen, and provide solutions for our rural communities. I think the Democratic Party has fallen short on that in the past, and I'm absolutely committed to turning that around. So one of the tax ideas, or the ideas that I have for our tax plan, and it's something that actually I've heard other farmers talk about, is to have a 2-year rolling tax system for our industries that rely and our businesses that rely on the weather. And this is especially important for our family farms, because right now, if there's a really bad weather year and we can't get and the family can't get some of the support through our farm bill, they can go out of business. Larger corporations, big business can withstand a bad year. Our smaller family farms can't necessarily do that. So we need to provide a system, put laws in place, and provide the tools to protect our family farms, which are really the backbone of our country. Another big thing we have coming up this year is the renewal of the Farm Bill. And we have to get on top of that. We have to deal with that and make sure that incorporates programs and policies that protect our ag community, but especially our small farmers. Because we're seeing a lot of our small farms eaten up by larger corporations because families can't weather some of the financial storms that we're seeing. And then one other thing that's coming up, I know, for Klamath, the Klamath area, Klamath Basin, and really throughout our state in this next year, is coming back to the discussion of water. Because we're having such a warm winter, we will have a drought this summer. So what steps are being taken to make sure that we provide the resources so that we can both honor our obligations we have to all the stakeholders when it comes to water, but also make sure we're protecting our farms as well. And that's some of the work that needs to be done. And I know the Klamath County Commissioners are working on that right now. And I applaud them in their efforts to try to make sure that our entire community is protected.
Yes, it's so important. And there was one thing that Tim White said yesterday that I was wanting to get your input on. He has an idea for infrastructure that would include creating a highway that would connect Klamath to I-5. What do you think of that?
What I've heard him talk about is a highway that runs from Ashland to the eastern part of the state. And I've heard him discuss that in the context of opening things up for additional investments throughout the state. So I do think that developing and investing in our infrastructure is important, and that's part of the conversation I've been having with people. But we also need to look beyond just roads. We need to be looking at other aspects of our physical infrastructure, things like housing, which is a critical issue throughout our district, things like broadband or internet access, because that's a huge economic development tool, especially for our rural communities, and also our energy grid, so better utilizing renewable energy. I also talk about our social infrastructure, and that includes things like healthcare, education, and safety and security issues. Going back to transportation specifically, we do have roadways that cut through, so it's not like we don't have them. We have, there's actually a couple ways to drive from the Ashland or Medford area to Klamath, and we, of course, have Highway 20 that connects the state through the central through Burns. Putting additional resources into and expanding these roads, that's something we can be looking at doing. But a lot of our state, over 50% of our state, is public lands. And so the argument that placing a larger road through public lands is not necessarily going to open up those lands for development if that land's not privatized. So I think that is one issue that is then triggered by that suggestion and that approach. And I myself believe in keeping our public lands public. This is a huge issue for our ranching communities, also hunters, fishermen, also part, frankly, of our treaty obligations to the tribes in terms of allowing for or permitting hunting and fishing throughout the commonly used areas. So ranching families, and I know this, my wife's third cousin used to be the chair of the Cattlemen's Association, and he's based in Eastern Oregon, and he is passionately against the privatization of public lands because that would really close the door on a lot of our ranching families to be able to access those public lands through the leasing system that we have in place.
Yes, I agree with you. The way you engage with people is really just above and beyond what I've seen most people do. I have this paramount of interviewers, right? And I want to be Jon Stewart when I grow up. Okay, so I want to be able to be open to everyone and be able to speak with them with respect and dignity, even when I don't agree with what they're saying. And I've come some way towards that, and you've got that. And it is really exciting to be around. And it's just energizing for everyone around you, just the way that you're able to really be open and engage people and bring them out. And I really believe that that is what sets you apart from everybody else. There are a lot of the same policies that everybody touts and all of that, but you understand humanity and you enjoy the process of creating a better world for people. And I guess I just want to say I really appreciate that about you. I think that it's so important, especially in the climate that we live in politically, for there to be people like you. So just thank you for doing what you're doing. Thank you for stepping up and being that person that we need.
Well, thank you for those comments. What I try to do is just focus on seeing the remarkable aspect of the person I'm talking to. And we have incredible people throughout our district who, I talk a lot about Oregon values and the fact that regardless of political affiliation and background experiences, what really unites us is the fact that we care about our families and we care about our communities. And that's true of anyone, regardless of political affiliation. And when I'm talking to Democrats and progressives, I urge people to distinguish what's going on in Washington and what the Republican Party is doing in Washington with our friends and neighbors who are Republicans throughout our district, because there is a distinction there. And the policies in Washington are hurting us, and they're hurting us all, regardless of political affiliation. And our friends and neighbors are part of our community. And if you focus on that, it's just a real gift and a real joy to talk with folks from all different socioeconomic and political and ethnic and cultural backgrounds, because it's then easy to see what they're bringing to the table and how they're a unique and important part of our larger community. One of the things I love about our country is our tremendous diversity. And diversity comes in many forms. And a lot of folks, when they look at our district, don't necessarily see some of the levels of diversity we have between urban and rural areas, some of the cultural diversity that comes into play. And if you look for and you see that, it becomes such a remarkable experience and a really enjoyable experience. So when I was traveling throughout our 20 counties this past summer and chatting with folks at county fairs and powwows and some of the different community events, I was really struck by how we seek to engage with someone who even comes from a kind of a philosophical difference or a political different background. If we look for what we have in common, look to find something we can agree on, and are careful with our language, because I talk a lot about trying to avoid buzzwords, the buzzwords that create division and create boundaries between us, instead of talking about ideas that really open up dialogue between us. When we focus on ideas, when we focus on finding something in common, I think people can be surprised at just how much agreement we have on core ideas like providing everyone access to healthcare and having a fair and equal tax system that doesn't favor corporations over people, and having ethical governance and good governance and integrity in government, where the representative shows up and focuses on the needs of the community and doesn't focus on creating boundaries and building up those barriers. When we have that as our focus, it really draws people into discussion. And people, I think, are hungry for it, especially in this era of political divisiveness. people of all political backgrounds and affiliations are hungry for a common message and hungry to come together and focus on solving community problems. And we see that throughout our district. We have a tradition of it too, be it the KBRA. There's a remarkable agreement, a remarkable accomplishment of folks throughout the Klamath area. Look at the sage-grouse solution. That was a remarkable solution and agreement process that was developed in Central and Eastern Oregon. Unfortunately, that's now started to fall apart because it's lost the support of the administration. But we have that tradition in Oregon. And I think what I'm trying to do is get us to focus on that again and make that part of our politics.
Fantastic. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining me today and having a conversation with me. I do support you. You have my vote, and I look forward to watching you on the campaign trail. And thank you again so much for being with me today.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, and thanks for your efforts to make sure people are not only thinking about politics, but thinking about it in a positive way where we can come together and create stronger and healthier communities. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I'm going to share with you something I wrote on a day that felt very much like today. Saturday, October 21st, 2017. Something wonderful is happening. On the cover of my journal, I have written, "Something wonderful is happening," and therefore it is. Words are magnets, and these words I read every time I look at my journal give my brain the fodder it needs to begin creating the positive moments I want to live in. The power of our minds to create our lives is amazing. We here in America and reverberating across the planet have endured more than our usual share of disaster, from the mass shooting in Las Vegas to the wildfires in California and Oregon, and the devastation in the wake of hurricanes and typhoons across the planet. We are all reeling from the destruction of lives and the pain and suffering of the aftermath. Still, people are homeless and without electricity and clean water by the tens of thousands in our own Puerto Rico, a month after Hurricane Maria blasted the small island. Signs throughout Las Vegas remind us to be Vegas strong, and fires still burn as we find 220,000 acres decimated, 5,700 structures destroyed, and at least 40 people dead over more than half a dozen counties in Northern California. And the front cover of my journal says, "Something wonderful is happening." When the fires began on October 8th, I was at a beautiful hot springs in far eastern California. And as the day pressed on, more and more evacuees came to rest and breathe in the tranquility of the sanctuary. I had planned to be on the road in Northern California that day, and the plans changed without reason, and, as so often happens, the reason revealed itself in a very unsubtle way. I was enjoying the solace of the hot springs and was a witness to two different views of the fires. One woman was acting as if she were there, being engulfed by the flames, all the while recounting her knowledge that her home, her things, and her family were safe. Another woman, while looking into the beautiful fire of the cast iron stove, said, "It's beautiful, and this is what my home looks like right now. And this is beautiful and 100% contained," with a slight smile in her voice. The first woman was devastated in the beautiful place. The second was grateful to be so fortunate to be where she was. And both reactions to the situation were real, valid, and worthy of my respect. They were both great teachers. Our minds are creative, and we can choose how we see the world. We can look at the things that happen around us and accept and allow the flow of energy to be as it will, or we can rage against the things we have no control over. There are actions we can take to secure ourselves against future disaster. Common sense gun regulation and care for our environment can make a great difference for the future. And now we must continue to breathe, continue to care for ourselves and those around us, and continue to love and give our brains the option of something wonderful happening. I'm reminded of a poem. The Optimist. The optimist fell 10 stories, and at each window bar, he shouted to his friends, "All right so far." We are wonderful when we choose to be. We see wonder if we choose to see wonder. Today, something wonderful is happening. Thank you for joining us today on Words with Wings. And I want to thank my guest, Jamie McLeod-Skinner. And as always, thank you, Tree of Sears, for our beautiful music. Words with Wings is brought to you by Words with Wings Life Coaching and Widget Power Cartoons. Visit us at wordswithwings.com.